Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Kaiser, and I'm the co-founder of the Own Your Data Foundation. It's an absolute honor to be speaking to you all today about what I believe is one of the most important issues that the world is facing today. Our data, our most personal information, has now become the world's most valuable asset, more valuable than oil and gas. And therefore, our personal information has become a commodity in a multi-trillion-dollar market and is being bought and sold and traded around the world without our explicit consent. Now, for a very long time, we have had the human right to privacy. Yet somehow, we do not have any ownership or rights over our data in most countries around the world. So how do we enforce our human right to privacy if we do not have any rights to transparency about what's being collected about us, any opt-in or consent to what that data is going to be used for, and if it's being monetized, which we know it is, given that it is a multi-trillion-dollar market, we right now are not receiving any value in return for us as the producers of the world's most valuable asset. Now, there's a reason why I started the Own Your Data movement in 2018. That was specifically to build up a movement and as much momentum as possible for countries around the world to start taking privacy and data protection seriously. Over the past few years, you have seen new laws and regulations enacted globally, but we're still in the beginning. This is so incredibly important because the problems we're seeing right now with lack of transparency around our data and lack of rights is really the tip of the iceberg. Every single day, we are producing exponentially more data than the day before. So the issues and complications with understanding everywhere in the world that our data has gone to and who has access to it and what they might be using it for, well, it's only going to get more difficult. So I'm here with a massive call to action in order to get you to care about your data rights. The reason why I'm here is because I started as a technologist on the first Obama campaign, where I saw that using technology could make the world a better place. The more data that we collected about people, the more we could understand how to get them activated, how to get them engaged, registering to vote for the first time, caring about what was important to them and their families. And after spending many years in the data science industry at a company you've probably heard of called Cambridge Analytica, I learned that technology tools might be unbiased themselves, but you can either have good actors or you can have bad actors that have access to these cutting edge technologies. And if these types of tech get into the wrong hands, then they can easily be abused. And we, as the individuals that have produced all of that data, are vulnerable to being targeted. So it was just a couple years ago where I became the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower and spent really the past few years every single day working with legislators, working with investigators, working with activists in order to make sure that some of our personal data abuses and the ways in which technology can be used not to make the world a better place, but to harm us, that we are moving towards protecting every single person and giving us more rights over our data than we've ever had before. So I think it's really important for us to talk through what are the ways that we are currently unprotected and how can we solve some of these problems. I started the Own Your Data campaign in March 2018, specifically to raise a few flags. One is that it is very difficult and has been very difficult for us to ensure that we have our human right to privacy. Now, what is the easiest law to enforce? Some of you lawyers out there might know, but it's property law. Around the world, if you own something as your property, you have a lot of rights over what happens to it. So if we are to own our data just like we own any other important asset in our life, like our car or our house, we should know exactly who wants to use it and what they're going to use it for. I like to actually mention the Airbnb model, which is if you want access to my data, my property, then just like if you wanted to use my house on Airbnb, you have to tell me who you are, what you want to use my property for, how long you're going to use it for, and we agree on a price, and I get paid before I hand you my keys. That's really how I see the future of data ownership. And it means that if in the cases that companies like Facebook or Equifax display negligence in protecting our data and allow our data to be breached, then we actually have legal recourse because those companies have then damaged our property. In fact, I was the first, and I was the only expert witness in the first successful case suing Equifax for property damage for their massive data breach. So now in the state of Minnesota, you own your data as your property because of that specific case. And I really believe that that's where law is heading, to make sure that we actually have legal recourse over what is done with our most private information. Now, here are some of the most important next parts of what data rights should really look like. First concept, transparency. Right now, we have no idea what data is being collected about us. I'm sure that most people listening to this right now, I can't see you, but I'd love for you to raise your hand to tell me how many terms and conditions you've signed today. And really, if you've ever read terms and conditions at all. I probably wouldn't see that many hands, even if we were together in person. And that's because terms and conditions boxes are specifically designed for us to not read them. As we go to new websites and accept cookies, as we download new apps on our phone and don't read the terms and conditions, we are actually signing contracts all day long. Would you ever allow someone to come into your office or your home and hand you a pile of paper contracts that you then flip to the back of and you sign without reading and just keep on doing that? You would never do that with a paper contract, but you do that with digital contracts every single day. We all do. I even sometimes am guilty of it. So I think it's very important for us to realize that not only if we don't read those terms, but even if we did, we have no idea what is being collected about us. Those terms and conditions are written specifically to be confusing, so that we're not sure what's happening and that we agree anyway. Now this takes me to our next topic, opt-in. What are we explicitly agreeing to be collected about us? For instance, in Europe, because of the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, we have the right to not opt in. So therefore, if we don't opt in, our data cannot be collected. Unfortunately, where I am in the United States, you have to agree to your data being collected. We are pre-opted in as a population. And to opt out is incredibly difficult, trust me. So I think it's very important for us to start to think about what those permission structures look like. I think the world is really moving to a place where we are going to transparently see what we could possibly agree to. And I might say I'm very happy for my data to be used for advertising, but I don't want to share it with political parties, for instance. And that should be my right. And I should be able to easily understand what I'm agreeing to. The next is tracking and traceability. And this is where a lot of the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal comes into play. When Facebook opened the Friends API, which was an ability for developers to pay Mark Zuckerberg to join the platform. That allowed, for that fee, access for the developers to all of the data of anybody on Facebook. And if I opted in to my data collection by playing a game like Candy Crush or Farmville, or filling out one of those surveys like "This is your digital life," or "What Disney princess are you really?" I think we all remember those. Then I was giving permission for not just my data to be taken, but the data of everyone else in my friend network. And Facebook had not set up any mechanisms for tracking and traceability. So once that data went to the developers, a lot of those developer companies started selling that data to other companies, selling our personal information off of Facebook on an open market. And that's where some of the biggest problems really stems from. If you, I think you remember the 2018 Datagate situation, and that's where that comes from specifically. So once we have the ability to track and trace where our data is going, then we can actually know whether people are adhering to what we've agreed to. And if you guys are fans of blockchain and distributed ledger technology, you might know of a concept called smart contracting. What smart contracts are is a digital self-executing contract. So it's very possible that in the near future, I am able to share my data and I can say, this is exactly who I'm willing to share it with, for what purposes, and they cannot use it for anything else. And on the back end, the technology will not allow our data to be used for purposes to which we did not consent. So that is the very exciting place where innovation is going. Now, what's even more important, and I think the most revolutionary of all of these ideas, is data monetization rights. Now, think about this for a second. It is possible for every single person on the planet to make enough money off of their data to, at minimum, feed themselves and their families every single day. Let that land for a moment. Data can become the great equalizer in society. We could earn a universal basic income, or what I rather say, a universal earned income, off of the value we've earned from being a producer of valuable data sets. So whether this data can be used for medical research to make sure we can cure cancer and diabetes and other illnesses more quickly, or whether we can use it for smart cities to make sure that we're not going to have that next traffic accident, or even, you know, on a larger scale, not have that next mass shooting or terrorist attack. We have the ability to solve a lot of the world's greatest problems with our data. And if we become a data input into marketplaces that allow everyone from governments to researchers to companies to get access to our data that we have consented to, then we can get a dividend or a portion of that value, which is so massive. So I think it's really important for me to conclude this talk with some of the core initiatives that are really going to solve these problems over the long term. And the first is digital literacy. So education on your data rights and cybersecurity protocols, media literacy to spot fake news and disinformation, how to be emotionally intelligent on social media, how to not be addicted to your devices and protect your mental and physical health. This is a program called DQ, like IQ or EQ, a digital intelligence quotient. It's a new IEEE global standard and will soon be implemented into schools all around the world. And that's what I teach at the Own Your Data Foundation. So education is the #1 top pillar. Secondly, laws and regulation that allow us to own our data, that give us transparency, opt-in, consent mechanisms, and the ability to monetize our own digital value. And lastly, ethical technology. I work with technologists around the world advising companies that are building solutions to some of our greatest problems. And I really believe that the future of advanced encryption, AI, robotics, blockchain are really going to give us that technical backend to make sure that we can really implement the laws that are meant to protect us. So I want to thank you all for listening to me today, for being here at Future Human. And if you want to learn more, I highly recommend that you watch my film, The Great Hack, on Netflix, and the new film, The Social Dilemma, that just came out, if you haven't seen it yet. And please read my book, Targeted. And if you want to reach out to me, please check me out on social media. On Twitter, I'm at OwnYourDataNow. And on most other social platforms, I'm at Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram /OwnYourData. So thank you all again for listening. Thank you for caring about data rights. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference.